Hello, Phil Croshaw here, and a very warm welcome to Passions. In this episode, we welcome Keith Smout to the show. You mentioned, funnily enough, you just mentioned as a throwaway a minute ago about the fact that you were actually a top swimmer in Canada.
Oh yeah.
How did that develop? Was that a passion, or was that something What happened with that?
It's funny. Maybe it relates to my life now. I used to wake up at 5 a.m. every day, and drove my parents insane. I think because I was just full of beans, for lack of a better term. I think this was when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I played soccer football, quite actively. I was decent at that, and I was, there's so much water in Canada, and so many lakes that my mom and dad were insistent, because it was nothing they ever did, that we all took swimming lessons. And strangely, I wasn't really good at swimming lessons. I was actually terrible. I didn't want to do treading water. I just wanted to zip up and down the pool as fast as I could. And some girl that was my instructor when I was about 8 said to my mom, he's not very good. He'll pass, but he's not very good. But you should put him in competitive swimming, because he's super fast. And if he actually, honed his skill a little bit. So I started swimming competitively when I was 9. And when I was 10, I set my first Canadian record, which was a relay with 3 other guys. But still a Canadian record. And as a 10-year-old, it was actually quite embarrassing. I had very blonde, curly hair that I never cut. And I ended up, in the papers and things, and it was pretty funny. And my career just grew from that. And, I was training probably 11 times a week by the time I was 12. Wow. I'd get up at 4 a.m. like I did. And my poor mom and dad, mostly my mom, would drive me to swimming. And then I'd go to school all day. Then I'd go to swimming again for another 2.5 hours. And I did that I lived in the suburbs of Toronto until I was 13. I set another Canadian record as an individual in butterfly. And then the team I was with just wasn't really good enough, competitive enough for me to move forward. So my poor mom then, for the next 4 years, drove me to Hamilton, Ontario every day, that same process. 4 a.m, she'd get up and make me muffins, drive me to Hamilton, didn't matter what the weather was. And, we had very bad weather in the winter. Drive me home. I'd go to school all day where I lived outside of Toronto, because I didn't want to move. Then she'd do the same thing and drive me to swimming at night. And then we'd do meets on the weekend. And I became a nationally carded athlete in Canada. I ended up with 4 records and did swimming all through university as well. I ended up, unfortunately, when I was about 18, with pretty bad tendonitis in my shoulder, even though I was the Canadian record holder in the 200 butterfly, and I just missed the Olympics just by a fraction. If I'd done the time I'd done the year before, I would have made the Olympics, but injuries and all that, and unfortunate. But what I love about swimming is it's an individual. It's up to you. The coach can coach you. It can help you with your stroke, but if you don't work hard and you're the only one in the pool, right? Nobody else is there. Nobody can push you. Nobody can put, change your tire, or nobody can put fuel in the car. So it's completely up to you. And just like a race car driver, when he's out on the track itself, when it's not the pit crew and it's not somebody fixing the engine, it's all up to him. If you don't have it, you're not going to make it. So I think a really good foundation of learning how to deal with people. I have an innate ability to talk and not have a problem just kind of speaking my mind immediately without a lot of pause. And swimming helped me deal with nerves. So that, I think, is one of the biggest things I took beyond dedicated to working hard, is I took that ability and put it into my career, because I have to get up in front of people I don't know, understand them very quickly, and then see what makes them tick and say, this is why you should be involved with us. Right? So, I do believe, to the name of your show, the name of your show, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, it's impossible to sell it to anybody else. And that's always been the key thing. I'm not, in life, they talk about the used car salesman. It's a tough sell. Hey, come on, buy, push. I'm a real soft sell person. So when we're doing multi-million-dollar sponsorship deals, which I've done for a long time, I'm soft sell. I think that my passion for what I do is what makes people want to come along, rather than me banging them over the head with stuff, I think that's,
that makes sense. And a couple of thoughts on that, actually. Number one, has that depth and breadth of passion helped you in terms of the stamina needed? You were talking to me before we started about all the air miles that you were rocking up until a few months ago. That must be I guess that must be very tiring, and I would have thought you'd need quite a lot of stamina for that. And does the passion for what you do help?
Yeah, well, I think I'm driven by the passion, of course. Interestingly, what you don't know is it's actually this week. I think it's the 27th of November will be my 4-year anniversary from triple bypass surgery. Oof. I was in Donington, lovely place to have a heart attack, and I had a heart attack in the Holiday Inn. I'd unfortunately gone through a period before that where I stepped on something and it caused blood poisoning. And so that affected my organs. And unfortunately, my parents, both of them, died of strokes. And so I've inherited not the best genes, as they would say. And my lifestyle has always been kind of go. And probably getting on airplanes and things like that's not the best thing in the world. In fact, when I had my heart attack, I had no idea I had a heart attack. I felt something, but I really didn't know. And then I worked the next day at Donington. I flew home to Canada. I spent 2 weeks just kind of working around the house for my job. And then I flew to Hong Kong, and it was 35 degrees centigrade, I remember. And I couldn't walk back to the hotel from the track. And I'm like, that never happened to me. I never had that problem. And I went to the series doctor, and he literally said, I'm going to pump you full of aspirin and get you on a plane and get you back to Canada, because you clearly have had a heart attack and you need to go to the hospital. Right? And so I landed, I went to the hospital, and a few days later I was having a triple bypass surgery. And my doctor said to me, thank goodness you swam all those years, because regardless of what's gone on with your arteries and your hereditary stuff, the reality is that you have survived because you have a strong body and heart from your years of that type of activity. So to answer your question, so I had about a 18-month period after that where I would say my stamina was very difficult. And I remember the commentator and ex-driver, Dario Franchitti, saying to me last year, he goes, you look so good now. You don't look gray anymore. So I'm trying to look super on my Apple webcam, but the reality is that to that long-winded answer for your question is that you need an incredible amount of physical and mental stamina. And for me, I joked at the beginning about this being 7 a.m., but 90% of the time I'm on the phone at 4 a.m. So my life is get up, do my work as much as I possibly can, have some breakfast around 9 o'clock Canadian time, work some more. I do a lot of calls. I deal with Europe predominantly, and then I have a bit of lunch, and then I have to take a nap for an hour because it's the only way I can function properly. Because then I deal with North America and South America during the afternoon because we have people from all over the place we're involved with. And then in the evening, I have my dinner, and then our parent company, as I said, and my actual bosses beyond Mark are in China. So then I get a bunch of stuff, and then I go to bed and I repeat. And that's kind of my life. So beyond flying, which is probably not the best thing in the world for you, although I'm fortunate to have contracted to fly in business class, so I do get to sleep. As I said to you, this COVID thing, the blessing for me has been I've flown to Berlin. I was going to go to Spain next week because we start testing. Actually, I was going to go this next couple of days, but I've actually canceled that because it's just too much, too risky right now with COVID because of what happened to me. So I have to be. But I'm fine, but I need to be careful. And also, I just found out yesterday, Canadians are not allowed to go to Spain, even though we have one of the lowest case counts in the world. But whatever, you know what? I'm not unhappy. My people can handle everything that needs to be handled. And as you had Mark on, he's well versed and well capable of being able to do all the things he needs to do. So
I think everybody's had to adapt, haven't they? I mean, that's the absolute harsh truth of it. Everybody's had to adapt, and I remember I've used Zoom for quite some years for doing video interviews and stuff. But you mentioned Zoom a couple of years ago, and people thought it was a nice lolly or something.
Yeah, we periodically used it, and Microsoft Teams and things like that. So we were fairly up to date, but not to the level that we're doing it now. It's crazy. I mean, I spend so much time staring at my phone or my computer talking to people. I've got to a point where I don't even put my video screen up sometimes, because some mornings, literally, I'm in my robe, my house coat, and with my cup of tea, and I'm sure people are tired of seeing it, right? And then half the time I have. Well, I think there's one behind me, like a Jaguar picture, which doesn't really suit my E DS Techeetah role. But there's hobbies, as we say, in our interests, and then there's our jobs. They're two different things. So.
Yeah, no, they are. Well, all I can say is, sorry, you just broke up for a second there. Well, all I can say is, there's got to be a book or memoirs, Keith, in there somewhere. There's a lot of things you've done, and you've got a lot of stories.
Yeah, I haven't probably touched on half of it. Some of the stories I couldn't actually in a book because when you work in hockey, especially in the National Hockey League, it's a very different world, right? And when you're young and every girl loves a hockey player, especially in Canada where it's a religion, you end up in circles with lots of people, and it's just a totally different world, I think. And I always joke with my wife that I should write a book because I go speak at because of my hobby interest. I go speak at like the Jaguar Club of Ontario or the Motorsport Hall of Fame or whatever. I've done a bunch of different speaking engagements because I like that story. For me has been so interesting. As I said, that full circle story, everything has come around. Like, I guess the end of it for me was when I took my mom to Silverstone, where she spent her youth going to races and things like that. And when we were testing, when I was with Jaguar, and that, she basically just, there I was in my Jaguar uniform. She was visiting from Canada. And she got to come to testing with my aunt, and it was like that full circle, and she literally cried because I was in a Jaguar uniform, which is kind of funny to me, but at the same time I understand that was her entire history, and I ended up being that person. I was the one in the family who went back and lived in England, and I love England. I mean, at my house here, which is, I don't own a Canadian car, North American car. I have all British cars. My daughter and wife have Minis. I have all Jags. It's crazy. And, we have a flagpole with the Union Jack on it, with a Canadian flag underneath. My daughter was born in England as well, in Banbury. So, like for me, I really like the fact that it's a full circle, that everything really genetically, unfortunately, some of the bad things, and also tie back to my parents in every single way. So
yeah, I think it's wonderful. And one of the other things that I was thinking when you were talking about your mum taking you to swimming and everything else, it kind of made me think that, you had a passion for that. But you know what? Probably the people that succeed most in life, whatever success means, is they will have at least a few people around them who are also passionate. Yeah. Passionate for the subject, the topic, or even just passionate to see their loved ones get to the maximum opportunities that are available.
Yeah, I think without that support structure and somebody, I think, so the thing for me is, if you grow up with the example of a parent that is creative and passionate about something, then you're bound to become the same person, right? I mean, lots of people want to go, oh, I don't want to be like my parents. Well, I would give anything to be like my parents. That's the thing, right? And I mean, they came to Canada with 25 pounds. That's how much money they had. They put 4 kids through university, did very well for themselves. Canada was probably a land of opportunity at the time. My dad got a job the day he arrived in Canada, or the day after, and never didn't work until, he retired. And I think that what I see in them is people who went through such horrific situations in the war. My dad fought in Burma, and in the European theater before he went to the Pacific. And I think to then still be optimistic and passionate about life is something you should feed on. I think maybe that if you don't take that over to the next generations, it's something that we will lose. That's always my concern, right? It's like the people, it doesn't matter what you believe, but all the people who complain about mask wearing and lockdowns and stuff. And I just think to myself, but the people who lived through World War II, and England is a perfect example of this country that was, is small, very small, if you think about it overall, may not seem it, on a day-to-day basis, but to have gone through that, the Blitz, all the things they did, I think we just need to kind of have some perspective. And I don't think the world and people are very good at perspective anymore. And I think that's an unfortunate reality. And one thing I always try to remind myself when I get upset about stupid things, small things, is that I just always try to think back to how my parents dealt with life. And, and I think that generation that came out of World War II are the people who really set an example for us, why we should never forget any of that situation, Sorry.
I think
a diatribe there, but
yeah, no, I think that's a great place to end. But I'm not going to end it because I've got another question. That's one of those moments where, oh yes, that's a lovely place to end, but no, because I'm curious now about something else. So I'm a terrible interviewer. I'm guilty as charged. And what I was going to ask you, just finally in conclusion, was that obviously nowadays there's a lot more discussion, a lot more debate about environment and green and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that debate and that discussion and that media coverage help to grow and develop the Formula E offering and brand?
Absolutely. So for me, one of the big things is, the old saying, you have to be in the right place at the right time. And Formula E hit the ground at exactly the right time and what was going on in the world. And, obviously, we can talk about people need to be entertained and people need leisure activities and they need distractions. But to me, there's no reason that distraction or that leisure activity can't still have meaning and help the world. And I think that we're so driven by that. And, I could say this in some ways, in the early days of Formula E, like the early days of any startup sport, you go through various machinations and ideas and concepts to make it work. But the fortunate thing Formula E had, in my opinion, is as much as there were really good ideas and good people, it took a foundation to hit the ground and be as good as it is now. But the reason that it was took off regardless is because it was the right place at the right time, a complete association and tie-in with all things green and all things environmental that, in my opinion, we're still completely not even touching what we need to. But as I said to you before, I think that we're going in the right path. And if I can be part of something that educates people a little bit more, I think that that's the key to everything. And I just, if I go off the planet or I'm on my deathbed, you know, beyond family and being with loved ones and loving people, and all the things I've done and all the people I've met, like I said, you know, whether it was the music industry and working with my heroes as a youngster like Joe Strummer, or I toured the Stranglers around North America. You know, I've done all that stuff, and I've met celebrities and Jackie Stewart and, you know, whoever, doesn't really matter, Michael Schumacher, whatever. Nothing will be more important than the fact that I tried to make the right steps with Formula E. Nothing is more important than that, in my opinion.
Wow, well, what a lovely place to end. I thought I'd missed the opportunity, but I clearly haven't. Honestly, Keith, thanks ever so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed that, and clearly there's a lot more interview opportunities there. I think touring with the Stranglers probably is a good half-hour show in itself.
Yeah, we could do the music one sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yes. I'll hunt you down now. I know where you are, even if I can find you in the depths of Canada in the snow. Keith, thanks ever so much for joining me today on Passions. I hope people have enjoyed it as much as I have, and we'll catch you again very soon with another episode. And thanks to Keith Smout for joining us today. It's very appreciated. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks so very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good one.